As a disclaimer, I don't want to vilify anyone involved with the production or release of this game. I'm coming at this from a place of passion for video games as an interactive medium, and I have a lot of respect for all the struggles the developers endured in bringing this game to market. Despite this, I want to showcase my feedback on the product I paid to experience. And this video will contain spoilers for all of Mixtape. If you have not experienced Mixtape, I recommend you do so before watching my review. Mixtape left me mixed. The new game by developer Beethoven and Dinosaur and published by Annapurna Interactive. I've covered games by the publisher in the past because I have loved what they put out, but this one in particular has been the talk of the town for multiple reasons. As a fan of Annapurna Interactive, I should be close to the target demographic for this game. Unfortunately, I walked away feeling bored and frustrated. When it comes to telling a story through an interactive medium, Mixtape does nothing through gameplay or mechanics to convince the player that it should have been a full-length animated film. I'm not saying that Mixtape cannot exist as a form of entertainment. However, Mixtape does not benefit as an interactive experience with the story it presents. The experience of playing Mixtape is strictly tied to the narrative. What you're doing in the game depends on what the developers let you interact with while the story plays out. There is nothing wrong with structuring a game like this. Many narrative-focused experiences do this. The problems arise when telling a story, as the one Mixtape does, tells nothing substantial with the medium of video games. The game features simplified segments of play with mundane actions like riding a skateboard, walking around to identify objects, and progressing to a flashback, where the player witnesses dreamlike memory scenarios with minimal interactions. While it sounds exciting, it's boring, to say the least. These segments of play can vary, but the majority of it boils down to moving, pressing buttons, and the characters perform animations and dialogue. At the beginning of the game, this did lead to some joyful moments for me, but as the game continues, these segments get uninspired really fast, as they don't require much input from the player. While the things you do are different in every single segment in Mixtape, they feel a bit too similar, and that will eventually bore out the player. There are fail states in the game, as the game literally rewinds a few seconds to put the characters back where they were to correct them, but this rarely appeared in the latter half of the game. As a matter of fact, control is mostly taken away from the player in those segments. It left me bored of the game and its mechanics, and it got me thinking how the developers could have made this whole experience better. While Mixtape is a narrative-focused experience, it doesn't stand out as much as its contemporaries. The major reason why many people are criticizing it from the outside looking in is that Mixtape doesn't offer much in terms of using the medium of video games to tell a narrative. You can interact with objects in the environment, control characters, and listen to dialogue, but despite some separate segments of play, that's about it. How Mixtape plays out from beginning to end doesn't make it worth going through a second time, unless you really want achievements. I do also have an issue with how this game handles replays. While you can go back to get achievements you missed out on, there is no way to skip cutscenes. While I get why they decided to focus on the narrative, it gets annoying when you're trying to replay the story, and for people who want to experience the best moments of the game. Also, it gets really aggravating during achievement hunting and when you're forced to see the same scenes over and over again. But this also leads to the point that other narrative-focused games have multiple reasons other than achievements to go back to it. A segment of play could play out differently, different choices can be made to change the outcome of the story, there can be new things to explore in the environment, or you can craft a short experience, but with a great score-based system that encourages experimenting with the mechanics and game world itself to find secrets and tricks to get higher scores. Mixtape does none of this, but besides requiring your input to progress to the next set piece, it doesn't benefit from being in the medium of video games. If you can look up a playthrough of Mixtape and get the same experience, That is a huge problem with choosing to give player inputs in the narrative. If this were made into a 3D animated movie, not much would change about it, and the creators would be able to firmly narrow their vision more. You can't say the same for a Hazelight Studio game like A Way Out, which firmly ties gameplay and narrative into a cohesive whole. And it benefits from being a strictly co-op experience, where if A Way Out was an unplayable movie, the experience would be vastly different, and the journey that the game takes you on wouldn't hit as hard as it presently does. This is the issue with some narrative-focused games, because the interactivity is what makes this medium different from books or movies. You can take elements from those media, but if all you're doing is pressing a button to progress, or just messing around with the environment until you're done, what have you done to express yourself as an interactive tale? However, this is still not to say that Mixtape fails at conveying its passion and emotion in every single moment. The game moves at a snail's pace, but when it lets the world and environment speak for itself, it's effective at giving a sense of nostalgia and wonder. It might be annoying for Stacy to introduce a licensed track, but there are cases where it does smoothly transition from cutscene to gameplay with an effective use of a panning camera shot. Or when you're in a stone skipping segment that has more going on with it, with challenges, secrets, achievements, and extra dialogue. And I can see what they were going for in the character designs, with Stacy blurring that line as someone mostly pretending to be a rebel when they can't really back it up, or how Cassandra's preppy look clashes with her personality. The game's art style is nice too, going for an orange tint throughout the game to symbolize the journey of the characters. I do have a problem with the animations of the characters that aim for a low frame rate. My problem isn't that they're using a style that is very popular in current day animated movies, but it is inconsistent with the world around them. When you have characters animated on a low frame rate, but then place them in environments and objects that are clearly animated at a much higher frame rate, the world and characters clash and it just looks fugly. While Mixtape didn't connect with me a lot, I can still recognize things that I did enjoy about that wasn't just superficial silliness. But there are things that could have been better in expressing that in this narrative-focused experience. Like the narrative. Mixtape centers around 3 characters: Stacy, Cassandra, and Slater. The story focuses on Stacy, whom we follow throughout her entire last day in Blue Moon Lagoon. She has a mixtape filled with her favorite tracks that represent how the day will play out. The reason why it's her last day in the town is that she plans to go to New York City to meet with Bella Deltone to show her her tape and get into the music industry. So, you're telling me this is her plan?
Ye! Do ye want to hear the mixing tape? 'Tis fire!
No, I do not believe you.
If you just listen to... It's a good tape.
And you would be right.
I'm gonna bump into her at Roastery on Franklin and Broadway. She's a regular.
So, you're stalking her?
I'm stalking her.
If I had to use 3 adjectives to describe the main trio, it would be bland, uninspired, and 1D. Not like One Direction, more one-dimensional. Stacey Rockford, as the protagonist of the story, is one of the most vexing leads I've played in a while. Stacy's world revolves around her friends, what she thinks is cool, and what she wants to do at any given time. Since she wants to go to New York to spread the mixing tape, she had to cancel a road trip that the crew had already mapped up for 3 entire years. Throughout the game, she constantly breaks the fourth wall to tell the player which song comes next on the mixing tape. Admittedly, maybe 1 or 2 of these are kind of clever, but most of the time, her explanations made me cringe.
Holy shit! This is The Touch by Stan Bush.
I'm well aware what that song
The
is.
Transformers animated movie soundtrack. It's the cheese. The stuffed crust, the quattro formaggio. But this is my only sporting memory, and it feels tonally appropriate.
I do not like this painting, Charlie. Smug aura mocks me.
Bella DeLong's performance didn't connect with me, and the way she inflects made every line delivery from her insufferable. Other character deliveries sound natural, while Bella's voice sounds like she's faking how a stoner sounds.
This is Cassandra and me at some mandatory school thing. I love this photo of us. Jenny fucking Goodspeed jumped in and I had to cut her out. Jenny sucks. Vague, brown, of unknown origin. I've got us getting to the party at 9:45. Do we deem this a cool arrival time?
When she's allowed to show emotion, she can clearly do so as an actress.
Fuck! Fuck!
I know.
Shut your fucking mouth!
But this dude bro performance just comes off as incredibly annoying and fake. She is pretentious, selfish, and her dialogue is unbearable. But the game is confused in trying to commit to her character. The game wants to present her as unlikable, and in the beginning, they accomplish this with Cassandra reminding her about the canceled road trip. They hammer this point in a lots of optional dialogue. Cassandra calls her out in the climax of the game, saying that all she does is think about herself. But despite that, the game doesn't present Stacy as someone not to idolize. Sure, Cassandra calls her out a lot for abandoning her friend, but that's the extent of the narrative calling her out. Her flaws aren't compelling enough, and in the end, she still gets what she wants. Her being unlikable is a common defense for her not being a character, which is the point I'm trying to make. It is difficult to write an unlikable protagonist, but not impossible. In No More Heroes, we have Travis Touchdown. Yeah, I know, stay with me now. Travis is unlikable because he, like Stacy, is trapped in his own head about who they are to everyone else. Travis acts like this cool hotshot because he bought a lightsaber off eBay, killed a guy who looks like Dante from the Devil May Cry series, and is now aiming to be the top assassin to have consensual sex with a woman. The world of No More Heroes, rightfully, treats him like shit.
No!
In reality, he's a perverted loser who jerks off to anime girls. The assassins don't take him seriously. Sylvia constantly tells him he's gonna die every fight, and he loses people he cares about throughout his journey. He does have another motivation for aiming for the top, for his revenge on Jean, but through the journey, he grows numb to the killing.
You're no assassin. You're just a perverted killing maniac.
In essence, they're the same. Don't go on thinking you're better than me. You think you're hot shit. Who the fuck do you think you are?
And by the time he reaches Jean, he's not satisfied. He got his revenge, but he had to kill his crush, who was his half-sister, no snoo-snoo with Sylvia, and even after reaching number 1, people are still trying to kill him.
You gotta be shitting me.
I know it's strange comparing a geeky, murderous assassin to a literal teenager, but you can see that Suda51 was able to craft an unlikable protagonist that is rightfully punished by the narrative, conflicts with the world around him, and has self-reflections about himself and his goal.
Maybe it had to be done, but vengeance begets vengeance.
Travis is unlikable, but he is a compelling character. He's also funny to laugh at. Stacy isn't compelling in the slightest. Her one-dimensional flaw is shown, but there's no deeper dive into her other flaws. She breaks the law constantly and has gotten in trouble, but she doesn't have a criminal record, nor is there any sign of consequences for her actions and flashbacks. Cassandra does, as her detention slip prompts her to talking about taking the fall for TPing a teacher's house. She never rectifies her hatred of Jenny fucking Goodspeed. She just says, "Hey, tell everyone I'm cool because I just saved your ass." Even in her flashbacks, she is shown to be dangerous to the people around her. But the game keeps chugging along. And I wouldn't call her saving Cassandra and Jenny a sacrifice, because she gets immediately bailed out by Slater. At least with Cassandra, taking the fall for the group made her worse off and made her dad more strict. But with Stacy, she gets rewarded when she gets the chance to host this cool, awesome party at her secret place and conduct fireworks as she's driven down a highway. it only further promotes her egotistical nature. And you could say that Stacy letting go of her friends is the consequence, but they still delay the road trip by a year so Stacy can go. I'm not asking for them as a group to break up. What I am asking is that the narrative stop giving Stacy so many free passes while everyone else around her praises her, and they end up worse for her actions. The positive trait that they do showcase about her is that she does care for her friends, but I always felt that her friends are too forgiving of her actions. Slater isn't critical of her actions at all, and doesn't mention or allude to the fact that they replaced Stacy with Jenny for the trip. Matter of fact, Stacy should be pissed off at him for not saying anything. While Stacy is insufferable, Slater isn't a character at all either. He's a plot device. Slater, while he is a supportive friend and goes along with Stacy's antics, due to his chill nature, that's the only role he partakes in. He has no real character arc and only acts as a yes man to Stacy, never calling her out. He and Stacy have been friends since they were young, and Stacy states that he is the reason she became such a rebel. However, he doesn't feel like his own person or take an active part in the story. He's passive until the plot requires him to be there for Stacy, or just say, yeah, bummer. I will give the game this. When Stacy is distraught over Cassandra throwing her off, he does fulfill his role well, as he showcases his work as a music maker, and allows her to play her next track, which leads to that stoner memory. But in the game's climax, he doesn't give his 2 cents. He barely has an opinion about Jenny replacing Stacy, and by his expressions, he knew Cassandra made that decision. The game doesn't give him any urgency or tension between him and Stacy for that. It just keeps playing along. This would have been a great time for Stacy to self-reflect by herself, or be in her own thoughts in the plot, rather than doing Slater's stoner flashback. We get optional dialogue saying that she should appreciate Slater more, but that's it. If Stacy is supposedly narcissistic, like other journalists describe her as, why didn't she have anything against Slater for not telling her that she was replaced for the road trip? He was clearly in and alright with the decision, as the camera pans to both of them when Cassandra reveals that information. But for some reason, the plot doesn't care about that fact, and he only goes, hey, we should stop fighting. There is so much potential to really squeeze some depth and story juices here, and you really just scratch the surface. And because of this, these characters don't feel like real characters. Instead of Stacy hugging Slater and moving on with the next set piece after her climax, what if Cassandra damaged her mixtape right as she was announcing her next song? It would still work, but have the song skip or cut in and out, leaving her in her own thoughts and reflecting on herself. Then she goes to Slater, tries to clear the air, the game continues as normal, and she fixes her mixtape, includes some lines about their friendship, and then you get fully back on track after that story beat. It's better to say something rather than nothing. Show that these characters are real people, not just representations of people you think of when you think of these stereotypes. But Slater and his unremarkableness has nothing on how much of a mess Cassandra's character arc is. Cassandra was the most compelling character when I first played the game. She is an A+ scholar, a professional softball player, and has strict parents. The reason she joins the crew is that she wants to be a rebel and be her own person. Her dad tells her not to hang out with the bad kids, and that just makes it more alluring. I've seen a lot of people in these situations, and I've experienced that, and sometimes it is necessary for their own growth. During Cassandra's segments, this is also where the story introduces the primary antagonist, Cassandra's dad, Officer Moreno. After they're done reflecting on Cassandra's memories, Officer Moreno grounds Cassandra because he hears rumor about the party on the beach, and he doesn't want his daughter near there getting into trouble. Cassandra is incredibly pissed about being grounded, but we follow Stacy through a big set piece as she flips off and explodes cars, trash cans, flamingos, and wrecks at the mall with her explosive middle fingers. What surprises me is that the developers didn't consider following Cassandra during this segment. Stacy just tells her to sneak out and just be there for the meetup. The game showcases Stacy being the real pissed off one, but then Cassandra comes in later to tell Stacy off. Cassandra keeps alluding to this wild side that she has, but we, as the player, never see it. She breaks the light in her memory and says she wants everyone to know it's her. But then the actions she takes to claim those titles are arbitrary at best. That light she broke? Right after that, the memory just ends. No one knows it was her who broke that light. The crazy side she says she has? Nowhere does that turn take place in the story, and it leads to the so-called resolution with her and her dad. She talks about how her dad needs to set her free or else she will continue in her wicked ways. But what wicked ways? What has she done to claim that title? She didn't do anything other than take ownership of a house fire that was caused by a firework she didn't shoot. Heck, she barely contributed to the party itself. I don't like this resolution. Cassandra has not done shit to tell her dad off. And then her dad finally magically understands her? She has snuck out to go to parties and hang out. That's it. This is why I genuinely think that the Love by the Smashing Pumpkins section should have been focused on Cassandra. You can still use the song. You can still have Stacy introduce it. But instead of playing as Stacy, have it cut to Cassandra breaking stuff in her way. Trash her room, make her get on a skateboard and break property, have her wreck the mall with her softball abilities. There is even dialogue mentioning that Cassandra can't decorate her own room due to her mom, with just her pen board on the left side. Make her actually cause destruction, and you can easily reflect that and bring this anger back to Stacy. It is Stacy's fault that Cassandra is grounded, and all she's worried about is her mixtape being ruined. Play into that! So when it actually comes to the reunion with Stacy, Cassandra has showcased her wild side to the player, why she's mad at Stacy, and she tells her and her mixtape off. Her dad would also be made aware of the destruction being caused, and it would make the resolution more believable. Heck, you can easily have Cassandra's dad believe Stacy was the one causing the chaos, but then realize it was his own daughter. Have the player control Cassandra and give her the branching dialogue options of things to say to her dad. You can easily have her dad react in different ways depending on your choices of dialogue. Her resolution is the second weakest part of the game, and it's getting made fun of without context because in the game, there is no context to it other than the fact that it's a strict parent. As it stands, Cassandra is underdeveloped, and this pivotal moment for her character arc is not justified with her. What surprises me about Mixtape is that, as a game, it is very sanitized when it comes to tackling hard subject matter or including adult material in the story, when that's showcased as a key point of the game. These are late teens about to go to college, and sure, they swear and drink and stuff, but we don't really see them actually taking drugs. Their language feels tame, and it lessens the supposed strong moments of the story. Cassandra's dad saying "F around" threw me the F off. I don't know who the scriptwriters are, but I'm looking at this father disciplining his daughter, and a well-placed fuck was warranted here. He's not at work, school, or at a children's daycare. No parent fucking says F around in this context. The same goes with Cassandra too. She just said fuck right in front of her dad. Why isn't she getting chastised for it if he hates foul language so much?
You can't be fucking serious.
I'm 29 and I still get chastised by my parents whenever I say the word fuck. Sorry, mom and dad, if you're watching this right now. Disappointingly, the game also queerbaits a relationship between Stacy and Cassandra, but never actually addresses it in the game or gives any payoff to it. Stacy is supposedly the one who lets out Cassandra's wild side, and she clearly likes her. This is stated multiple times in the story. She gets extremely jealous when Cassandra lies to her to go hang out with Jenny in the past. Cassandra mentions having a dream about Stacy, and the first thing she asks her is that if they did it, and Cassandra says that the dream ends with that. Jenny fucking Goodspeed calls her a fat lesbo after she told her she had polio legs. Also, Mom and Dad, that is Jenny's name in the credits. I am not doing this to make you mad. But other than saving Cassandra from her dad, then Cassandra standing up to him at the end, there's no payoff to the two of them. The story just has them apologize, say goodbye, and that's it. You dedicate an entire section of the game to this crush that Stacy has with Cassandra and jealousy with Jenny, and it goes nowhere. I guess Stacy forgave Jenny because she realized she was being a dick to her and hating her for no reason. You know what would have been nice? Dialogue or anything regarding Jenny and Stacy's current relationship. At the end of the game, it does show them together at the party, but nothing showcases that Stacy feels at least a little bad for judging Jenny so much. They just tell someone off not to touch the music. It's a wasted opportunity for a good character moment where it would have showed how Stacy has changed over the course of the story. It just looks like they're friends because Stacy is just a cool person for saving them. She can still be allowed to hold everything against Jenny fucking Goodspeed because Jenny isn't a real character either. She's not allowed to have opinions. And last but not certainly least, Officer Moreno. The game's antagonist leaves so many questions up to interpretation that it leaves Mixtape weirdly antagonistic toward him. I found JB Tadimia's performance decent, but weak when it came to showcasing his anger toward Cassandra.
I'm not paying for you to F around and party at college, to go on road trips. If you're not grown enough for a privilege like this, then we'll wait till you are!
I say this because in the game, while he's a strict parent, the game doesn't really answer the question of why. The game doesn't give a motivation to him being a strict parent, and only slightly when Stacy confronts Officer Moreno.
In 1969, on his second studio album, Canadian artist Leonard Cohen said, "Like a bird on a wire, like a drunk in a midnight choir, I have tried in my way to be free."
I interpreted this in the literal sense, like Stacy did when she was talking about Cassandra's freedom, as Mr. Moreno quotes Leonard Cohen's Songs from a Room album, referring to himself. Maybe he was like Stacy in the past, self-obsessed, had his own soundtrack, but the game doesn't take time to reflect that. And since it's just one line of dialogue, many people just hated the reference and didn't want to analyze it. There are ways you could have drawn parallels to him and Stacy or made him a foil for our protagonist. Maybe have him showcase a track from his memory and have him and Stacy put themselves into perspective to understand each other. Yeah, he's motivated to protect his daughter, but what about asking how he tried in his way to be free? A character should have goals, motivation, and a reason to be there. The game hints at more depth here, but when you don't latch onto that, he's still showcased as the guy in the wrong. And of course, Cassandra's outburst just tells us that he's an asshole dad. By the way, writing this script has made me realize I was too harsh on the Disney movie Turning Red. For people who like that movie, here's a Turning Red apology form that I have filled out. Because unlike Mixtape, Turning Red actually addresses the struggle of communication between parent and child, and how both have lived different lives, but still have parallels to each other, and they can learn from each other and understand one another. It just feels like the topics or experiences that Mixtape claims to tackle are just let kids be free without really showcasing any consequences or why it can be a good or bad thing. It doesn't raise any thought-provoking questions. It feels like they had ideas for cool set pieces, tried to find a song that matched that, and just let it play and write dialogue around it. Which is exactly what they did. The issues with Mixtape's licensed tracks, first off, is the fact that it makes it terrible to stream for creators who will get their videos hit with copyrights out the bat and their Twitch VODs muted. But the music is built around the story beats. They are not integrated into the game's mechanics very well. At the beginning, they kind of tried to do that when That's Good by Devo has the crew clapping to the beat as they skateboard down the hill. Or when Freak by Silverchair, you can rock out as the controller rumbles to the beat of the song. And other than clapping during Yesterday's Hero, that's all I remember to my memory. They had these songs in mind, and ideas for story beats to implement them, and started fun ways to do that, then they just gave up. For the rest of the game, they don't do anything meaningful with the use of the music. The last time I heard The Touch by Stan Bush used in a video game was Saints Row 4. Not a perfect game, but it was one of my favorite moments in the game because it was used effectively in the finale. After fighting through aliens in the real world using regular weapons, the boss finds power armor, and this armor gives the player back their superpowers from the digital world as they're rushing forward to lay the final smackdown on Zinyak. It's a great homage to the original 1986 Transformers movie, and the game literally tells you to be a badass. Mixtape, on the other hand, decides to use it for a sports memory because it feels tonally appropriate, according to Stacy. The extent of the song's usage is to say that Cassandra is good at softball. What's funny is that another track from the Transformers soundtrack was used appropriately in the story, Dare, as the crew escapes from Officer Moreno. Yeah, game, I didn't need Stacy to recognize that, and I barely listened to 80s music. I was born in 1997. Even though I didn't emotionally connect with the soundtrack, I feel like the game's uses wasn't to its full potential. But maybe looking at another person's perspective might help me. Sometimes it's good to read other people's thoughts. Maybe the IGN reviewer who gave the game a 10 out of 10 had something interesting to say about Mixtape's soundtrack. I'm not sure I felt a game connect so intrinsically to its music in such a charming way since Simogo's excellent Sayonara Wild Hearts!
No, 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 don't do that!
Sayonara Wild Hearts is a score-based arcade-like narrative game that is an interactive pop music video. The controls are simple and it plays out the same every time, but the way the player interacts with the game is how they would get a great score. Moving, collecting, and performing your QTEs on time with the music is how you get more score. Every single level, animation, action, set piece, and even secret bonus are timed to the original score by Daniel Olson and Jonathan Ng, and the lyrics by Lena Olson, which tell the story of the fool as she comes to accept herself and move on after heartbreak. The game would not exist without the soundtrack because it's the heart and soul of the entire experience, and it was created to match with the fun arcade gameplay of Sayonara Wild Hearts. In Mixtape, there are 28 licensed tracks that were chosen, and they're woven into the narrative because the character announces out loud what song is currently playing, and it plays in the background with minimal interaction from the player. The music is not intrinsically in the game. It is forced into the game to flex that they were able to secure all rights to the game's music, and it won't be delisted because of music deals. The only time the world of Mixtape interacts with the music is when characters clap to the beat of the music, like in That's Good by Devo or Yesterday's Hero by John Paul Young. You can replace any of the tracks in Mixtape with a different licensed track and change the script to have the characters announce what song it is. You can't do the same for Sayonara since those were original pieces made for the game. No track used in Mixtape is original, which hurts the narrative of the story, and Stacy would still be the same character if you changed the soundtrack to other licensed tracks. The experience of playing Sayonara Wild Hearts with its music is that you're also reacting to the score itself, like in the level parallel universes, with the lover snapping to the beat of the song, and the level literally changing its geometry to match, as the player has to react to the music itself. There are multiple levels and set pieces like this in Sayonara, and each of them is unique for the hour-long experience it takes to beat it. Mixtape doesn't do anything of the sort, and like previously stated, the music just plays in the background while the player plays a set piece or can rock out and yell cheeseburger, cheeseburger, cheeseburger 10 times without any consequence or unique dialogue. The game can play itself if you wanted it to. Not only to mention the fact that Sayonara Wild Hearts is infinitely replayable with tons of unlockables with its Zodiac riddles acting like challenges and achievements to go back through the levels, with some being incredibly easy to solve or hard and confusing in exactly how to unlock it. You unlock Album Arcade after beating the game to go through the entire game in one go, aiming for the top score, and beating that you can unlock Yellow Arcade to beat the entire game without being hit once, which is not an easy task. And after beating that, you unlock Wild Rank to really perfect your scores and essentially aim for perfect scores. There are no replayable factors of Mixtape other than collecting achievements by experiencing all the dialogue or hitting perfect home runs. Once you play through it, it doesn't challenge you, want you to do better, or encourage you to find ways to gain score. There is no score. There is no replayability. I would really like to know if this person has actually unlocked Wild Rank. Heck, has he even beaten YOLO Arcade? Because I have. I've done it multiple times. Basically, from rambling on like this really fast without any comprehension most likely has ton of incorrect uses of grammar. What I'm trying to say is that don't ever fucking compare the excellent amount of effort Sayonara Wild Hearts took to match its 23 levels and 26 original tracks to its arcade perfect gameplay to the absolute clusterfuck of confusion that is Mixtape ever fucking again. Whew. And of course, because people are weird and angry and stuff like that, I don't hate the reviewer. Do not harass the reviewer. I just heavily disagreed with that statement. Anyway, one of the most infamous scenes from the game is the pivotal character moment with Stacy running to Heaven 11 to save Cassandra from getting caught by her dad for sneaking out from her grounding and drinking with Jenny. This comes right after Cassandra told Stacy off with Jenny because she didn't want to do the trip with her, and now she's rightfully ditched her to hang out with her other friend, who, mind you, has not endangered or hurt Cassandra in any way. If she is caught by her dad, she would be sheltered for life. Not the best character motivation, but there are some stakes to the moment. What follows is an interactive running segment that is an homage to the ending of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where he has to run back to his house and pretend like nothing happened to make sure he doesn't get caught by his teacher or parents. There are two major problems with this scene. Number one, the absence of interactivity. The player can literally put the controller down, take a piss, wash his hands, and start eating a bag of chips and have no consequence for doing so. The entire scene plays out by itself, without any input from the player. And I would like to point out that to progress after track 20, which was the drugged out video store scene, no input is required from the player for a full 15 minutes. There are two segments of play here, but my HEB loaded baked potato chips, hashtag not sponsored, were about to expire, and the game nicely let me finish them. And once I was done, I walked around the shack to watch some animations from the party. So, thanks for that. Number two is that this is the absolute worst way to do a homage to that movie. There are reasons why Wacky Ferris was running the way he was, not trying to get caught by his parents, and getting back to bed on time. If you were to turn the experience of Ferris Bueller running to his house into an interactive experience and put another player in that role, a straight path where you dodge obstacles and experience scripted sequences is the bare minimum, and as a video game, does not work. Again, Mixtape, you are a video game. Even if the player doesn't have a consequence or a fail state, you need to give the player choices. Ferris Bueller, as a character, is charting out his course home, going through multiple paths and weird alleys to get there before his parents get home. Instead of just going a straight line, why don't you give the player the choice of what paths to take, what set pieces to experience, and this can lead to more unique playthroughs and experiences. It would also allow you to have unique camera angles and points to make gags. Even when Ferris is on a time crunch, he still stops to pause, say hello to some ladies, or steal some guy's beer. This falling action as an interactive experience could have been way more. This segment is just showcase that the developers wanted to tell a story about a teen's last day in a city with musical elements thrown in, but did not consider using the interactive medium of video games to tell that story. You can get close to the same experience playing Mixtape as you would watching the game itself on YouTube. A lot of people trying to use Mixtape as the smoking gun against the publisher Annapurna Interactive are honestly just trying to find a reason to hate on a group of people they made up in their head. As a publisher, Annapurna has published indies that not only deserve to be an interactive experience, but are fun and memorable games I love going back to. Sayonara Wild Hearts is my favorite game they presented to the world and why I pay attention to what they put out. And because of that, I've played games like Donut County, Neon White, Stray, Outer Wilds, and Journey. Do they have a perfect track record? No. But there are titles that I wouldn't have even batted an eye that I still thought were neat, like the visual comic Florence. Sure, the game's only like 30 minutes, but it tells a love story through visual storytelling, puzzles, and how the main character interacts with the environment around them. It's not complex, but I still found things to enjoy about it as an interactive experience. Florence tells a story that was someone else's personal experience that stuck with me. Even when I can't fully relate to a character, if you take the time to develop and let me understand them, I'm willing to listen and have that experience stick with me. This paragraph is now a recommendation for Florence, which I would actually recommend to anyone looking for an indie narrative experience. It's available on mobile, Steam, and Switch, and it's really short. It's only like 30 to 40 minutes, so it's worth throwing a tip toward the developers if this looks interesting to you. Games are art. Whatever the creator puts out into the world is an expression of themselves. Some might connect with it, some won't, but we all have things to say about it. I can understand others vibing with Mixtape's soundtrack, art style, or reminiscing of being a high schooler in the 90s. But a game strictly focused on the narrative, it has to do more than just put underdeveloped characters around a set mixtape for me to care. Use the fact that you are a video game to tell your story. Don't just give me mini games to fiddle around with until the next segment. Interweave your mechanics with the plot, give meaning to the music, and more importantly, have something strong to say. That's what frustrates me about Mixtape, because I have experienced better narrative-focused games, and I cannot say I would consider this the best, as others would claim. A Way Out showed me how using co-op interactivity, blending film techniques, and narratives into the mechanics of video games can work. Slay the Princess showed me that you can take a simple cliched concept and thoroughly expand upon it with multiple dialogue choices, heightening replayability with many branching dialogues, designs, and art. Katana Zero showed me how to achieve tight, focused gameplay and a narrative that intrigues without forcing exposition when the player doesn't want it. And there are many more examples that people who are watching this can think of. Mixtape just left me disappointed. I would want the developers to do more with their next title than just listen to the praise the game is getting and stick to only listening to that praise. It's how we get stagnation. Game likers are gonna laugh at the cringeworthy dialogue, the out-of-context scenes on Twitter, or make fun of the song choices. But at the end of the day, Beethoven and Dinosaur still wanted to express that to the world when making this game. It definitely didn't stick with me, but it doesn't mean I hated what the game was trying to give me. I just wanted it expressed in the best way possible. Mixtape, unfortunately, did not remind me of who I was. It reminded me of the pit in my stomach I had when playing 2017's Sonic Forces. I paid money for those products, and I'm not getting that back.